Okay, so for throws, let's start with basics, and then there will be some no right. So we have seen so far that always there is a method A, class A, right? And we have a method m1, right? We have done this, right? Every time. This is a basic thing, right? And we have used this object we have created, the object of this class, right? And then after this thing we call the method. This is how we have done things so far, right? Am I audible? Hello? Is my screen visible?
Yeah, yeah. I
All
am.
right, cool.
Yeah, Abhishek, audible.
So if we run this, so this output, right? I don't have to go again with this, right? Object creation and normal method calling, right? Basic thing. So but the thing is, what if I'm the one who's writing this method, right? So what if this method m1 is not something that just simply print something, right? What if it's a method that opens a file, then read the file, and then print all its content, right? That we have already done in the previous, in the error compile time error parts. File not found exception, right? Over here we have done this thing, right? From this path we have read. So when we were reading this thing, then over here we have the exceptions, right? File not found exceptions already there in place. So similarly, if I want to write something, if my m1 method is there, right? Or if m1 method is not good, let's my file reader, right? My file reader, let's create a my file reader and let's delete the m1 method. So I'm creating my file reader and I want a method print file data, right? And this method takes a string file path. Cool. So file data printed, right? And then from the runner, instead of this, now it would be my file reader equals to new my file reader and file reader, then print, and then path, some path, let's say users docs and file to read.txt. Cool. And from location, or better be path. Cool. So now if I run this is also method normal call, right? This thing has been printed, and this is a normal method call, right? Normal object and normal instance method call, right? And printing the data that I have passed. Nothing new, right? I'm audible?
Yeah.
So let's suppose that instead of just doing a sys out, I want to perform operations that will load the file, then read the file, and then eventually print the data on console. So these three things that I want to process or complete. So there might be a chance, right? The path of the file is not present. The file in the path is not present, right? Then I cannot read the file, right? I'm audible?
Yes.
Then if I'm creating this method. This method is a generic or helper method, right? This class is a helper method to read the files, right? So my task is not to look into the business logics, right? There might be a chance in some places, if I don't find a file, then I should throw an error. In some cases, if I don't find a file, then it's completely cool, I can process ahead without any issue, right? So it depends on the business logic. It could be, for example, if I want to find a report of my bank statement, and the file is not present on the cache or anywhere in the path, right? The path can be a cache, right? Mostly it would be of the AWS or some other uh, services. So what eventually happen, if I don't have a file for my bank statement, then there should be a mail triggered to me that there has been something wrong, and we will try to fix it, not to the end user, then at least to the developers and the teams which will be responsible for these things. And okay, and in some other case, like for example, if I want to make sure before sending some document to someone, I want to read a file and take data from the file of the words that needs to be removed or replaced. Like for example, I don't want to use load. I In my project there is another file which has a key map that replace load with a read, right? So I will just simply change this thing, right, and then send the data. But if I don't have any file with this data, then it's completely cool, I can just simply send the data, right? So the business logic can be different. So if my method is doing something of opening a file and then reading the data, or sending the data of that particular file, then I cannot take the responsibility of throwing an error, because throwing an error is also a part of business logic, right? So I cannot write throw some exception, right? So I cannot write over here, if file is not found, I cannot write throw new file not found exception, right? I cannot do this. And over here I can say my file error file not found. Because if I try to do this thing, then what will eventually happen is someone is using my function, then there will be an issue. He needs to know whether if there is no file, then what I should be doing, right? But the thing is, this can happen in my code, right? So how will I make sure that the user who is using my code is aware that he needs to make sure that he is handling the case where if file is not present, then he needs to handle an exception. Because right now if I'm running this code, there is no issue, right? If the code is running, right? But if I want to make sure that the person who is using my method use a try catch block or provides an alternative implementation if the file is not found, I can force him by adding throws keyword. Throws keyword delegates the responsibility of file not found exception. Now if I try to run this again, there will be an error. Unreported exception must be caught and thrown. At which line? Line number 8. It's saying that this line number 8 there might be a chance that at line number 8 file not found exception will be there, right? And it needs to be caught or declared to be thrown, right? So it says that okay, either put it inside the try and catch, right? This is the one way to handle the exceptions, right? File not found exception. Right, this is the one thing, right? And the other thing can be, and now if I try to run this, it will allow to run, right? So by writing the throws keyword, I have delegated the responsibility of exception handling from this code, from this method to the caller method. This is the caller method is the main method, right? So now it's the responsibility of main method to provide the alternative implementation or delegate it to someone else. I can remove this as well. If I remove this entire code now here, now I cannot run this, right? But I can delegate the responsibility again. It's not like I can delegate it only for the first time. Now I have again delegated the responsibility. So what will happen now if I run this? It will be properly executed, right? Because I have now again, my code does not have any responsibility. But this is one of the interview questions which I have done now. We will cover this again in a little while. So this thing is clear. Why do we use throws? Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Okay, so can anyone please explain me why do we use throws. Same, to delegate the responsibility of exception handling. Throws keyword, handling of exception handling, try catch, and this. Okay, it should be something else. Okay, all right. Central equation. Okay, only 2 places. 3. Okay. Okay, all right. It's not written separately, but over here you can see throws keyword is used to delegate the responsibility of exception handling to the caller method. If you answer this thing, it's completely correct and fulfill this statement, right? So whoever is calling the exception, whoever is calling the method, now will be responsible for handling the errors, right? If you are the owner, if you are using the car, then you will be responsible if something goes wrong, right? If accident happens, something breaks, then you will be responsible. If you are not using the car, then you won't be responsible, right? Similarly, if you are using the method, then only you need to delegate the responsibility to someone else, or write the try catch, or provides the alternative implementation if something happens. All right, I'm audible?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, now let's do few. Only there will be 2 interview question out of this. One will be the chain delegation chain. Cool. And another one will be main with throws. All right, so first let's see the delegation chain. There will be a class A. In A we have a method m1. All right, sys out A. Okay, we have three, not 2, we have 3 interpretations. Okay, so this is A dot m1, right? And in runner, if we simply do A equals to new A, and then A dot m1, if I run this, it will run properly, right? There is no issue. So one thing is there is, okay, this would be an interview question also as well, but I will let you know one thing more, because I think no one asked this question as well. Is if I write here throws file not find exception, now the code will run or not run if I try to run this runner again? Okay. Okay, so do you need time to refresh the concept of exception handling? My connection is network is fine, right? Am I audible?
Yeah, Abhishek.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, your voice is little breaking.
Okay, all right. Okay, let me change location. All right, cool. Is it better now? Hello.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Yes. You're audible.
Okay.
Audible.
So if I run the code now, what will be the output?
Proves it will not compile.
Okay, cool, correct. Right answer is it will not compile. But why?
You are not handling it. Na? Once we are throwing that exception.
Correct. Okay. Okay, cool. What if? What if now I change it to arithmetic exception now?
Yeah, because the unchecked exceptions are not checked, right? So it will compile.
What will be the output now? Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, Abhishek.
Okay, if I run this again, what will be the output now?
Can you show that code? Main.
Okay, main, I'm just creating an object of this and they're calling the m1 method.
Yeah, so it will print AM1
Okay,
automatic exception is happening, right? So it will run fully correct.
come again.
AM1
Why no error now?
because it is a runtime exception, right? It will not be checked by the compiler. Only in the runtime, if it occurs, then it may break.
No, okay, cool, correct. All right. So see what usually happens now. Okay, everyone understand the difference between the check exception and uncheck exception, or the runtime exceptions or compile time exception?
Yeah, yeah, Abhishek.
Okay,
Yeah.
so please answer, Dikshita. Difference between compile time
Uh,
and runtime exceptions?
Compile time exceptions is the one that you see before compiling. I mean, if I take the example of file not found exception, uh, that will be a compile time exception because we haven't specified the path anywhere. So it was able to detect that. But arithmetic exception would be runtime exception because it has to calculate something for it to, give an error arithmetically.
Okay, you have explained those two exceptions, not the difference. I mean, one will not let you compile the code, so no dot class file will be created, right? This thing, and
Yeah, yeah.
that would be the compile time exception because it it didn't allow us to create the dot class file, so that's why
Compile.
compile time.
Yeah, yeah.
Because after using the
Mm-hmm.
javac command, we create the dot class file which is we called bytecode. And in runtime exception the code is compiled, and cause due to some logic which cannot be inferred
Mm-hmm.
directly on the runtime, only we can find that there isn't some exception or not. During the runtime only we can be aware that whether it will be arise or not, right? So
Yeah,
that would be the runtime exception, right? So what you are explaining
yeah,
was correct, but okay, cool. So now we know difference between these two, right? So the thing is, now what we know that how this line works, right? A is the constructor, right? New is the keyword. A is the class. This is the class reference assignment operator. New keyword will provide the memory in the heap area, right? And how it will check how much memory it required, go inside this and try to find the instance variables, because local variables are provided memory during the method execution and static already get when we do the class load file, dot class file loading happens. So this is how this thing happens, right? And then this is constructor is called to initialize the instance methods dynamically, right? So we know entire thing what happens here, right? This
yeah, yeah,
okay, all right. And this a dot m1 is simply goes inside the method and start executing this, right? If I remove this thing right now, right, this is what it happens, right? The control flow moves from line number 7 of class runner to class A's line number 7, right? m1 method. The control flow moves from here to here, right, creating a stack. We have seen that as well, right?
Yes.
But now the thing is, if I have exceptions anywhere, right, inside the method or written over here as well, right? So what usually happens, if I write over here any compile time exception like this one, right? So I know that this is a compile time exception, right? So compile time exceptions are mandatory to handle. So if I'll come over here and try to run this, it will not allow me to compile the code, because compiler will come here, it will see okay, everything is fine, then it will see okay, the method a, the object a, the main method at line number 7 is trying to call a m1 method which is throwing a compile time exception. So all the compile time exceptions must be caught, you see over here, same language of the Java, right, or declared to be thrown. But this is for all the compile time exceptions, right? So either I can wrap this inside try catch, or I can delegate the responsibility again, that okay, I being the main method don't want to handle any exception, so instead of file not found, I can write throws exception, right? So that means that okay, I don't want to take the responsibility of handling the exception handling, whoever is trying to call me, please handle the exception handling. So this is the delegation, to delegate the task. Your manager delegates the task to you, right? That's how the throws keyword delegates the task to whoever is going to call the particular method. But with compile time exception, this is not the case. If during the compilation compiler comes and check okay, there is throws written with the runtime exception, right? I can write anything, right? My runtime exception, we can create our own runtime exception as well, right, over here. So the thing is, if I write any runtime exception over here, right, so what happens, it won't allow that, there will be no error, right? Visible? Only compile time exceptions needs to be handled, or by handle it means needs to be inside the try catch block. So it's also called must be caught, or its handling must be delegated to someone else. That part is this, declare to be thrown. Cool? Understood?
Okay.
Okay, I'm not okay, let's create it. Okay, let's make more package, right? So now I will create 3 more questions then. One will be this, okay, throws compile time exception, because this is common item, right? On a daily basis we use this. In the second part of the code, we usually follow these things again and again. So throws and this and delegation chain, okay. So okay, so it will take a little time. Let's class a psv, not psv, public void m1 sysout a hyphen m1, and over here throws file not found, let's say file not found itself. Compile time exception, right? So now if I try to run this, okay, runner, so I will able to call it, right? Will not be able to call, because needs to be thrown or caught, right? So let me comment it out. If I am not calling the method, I don't need to handle it, right? I can simply run it now, no error, right? If I'm calling the method, then only I need to handle the method, right? And another example will be, okay, not delegation chain, it will be throws a runtime exception. So everything will be same. with a simple difference that it will be a runtime exception. All right. System.out.println a-m. Cool. So now it will run properly, right? No issue. So we can mention not mandatory to handle runtime exceptions. All right. Okay, so this we have already done this side, we can run it as well. So this would be the second thing, and the main with throws. Okay, we will see after the delegation chain. Okay, yeah, more things needs to be taken care. Okay, that needs to be part of throw, not throws. Okay, all right. What happened with this? Throw without try. Okay, all right. I think I haven't completed the throw without try. Okay, yes. See what will happen if I have line 1 here, line 1, line 2, line 3 and line 4. All right, what will happen if I do two things? One, try without throw without try. Okay, so what will happen if I do throw without try, throw compile time exception without try, and the another one would be throw runtime exception without try. So the same thing will be here. It would be just instead of, okay, my bad, it will be throw new all right. So what will be the output in this case? All right, what will be the output in this case if I uncomment the lines and try to run the code? Hello, this is basically, we have already covered this. I'm audible?
Yeah, Abhishek. And the output will be line 1, line 2,
Okay,
and
see, okay, let me just have one more package, temporary package over here. Please let me know the output of this class test runner, right? Because this is the third or fourth time that I'm saying that you people are falling for the same kind of trick question. sys out. All right, line 1, it should be obvious now at least. Okay, my bad. Line 1 and okay, let's have line 2, 3, 4 and then even 5. All right, I'm going to comment this. Okay, and if I'm going to write a return here, what will be the output if I uncomment the lines? This, uncomment this, and then try to execute the code. This is very basic and it will be a part of each
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
every
1, 2, 3.
language.
throw error. Is it throw error? Error will,
It will throw error. Why?
because there is nothing to return.
Nothing to
Line
return.
1, 2, 3.
Nothing to return. Okay, see, this method expects nothing to be returned, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay, all right, no worries. Let me write something else, right? Public, if you want something to return, right? Public void f1, right? And then I'm going to copy it there. Okay, and then I will return 1. Cool, now it's good. And I will simply going to call m1 over here and I will make it static as well. Cool. Now if I run the code, now what will be the issue, right? If I uncomment the code and then try to run it, see, this is not even related to Java.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, line 1, line 2, line 3 will they will execute and it will return.
All right, all right. See guys, every one of you needs to work hard, because the thing is, see, it's very basic. Line number 1 will be executed, 2 executed, 3 executed, right? And then the value will be returned, right? Right, this is what will going to happen, right? Is there any way possible these two lines will get executed anytime? Is it possible to execute this line number 4 and 5?
No.
So if it's not possible, so why to write? And if it's not going to execute anytime, anywhere, so why even let you compile it? Unreachable statements, right? These are unreachable statements, right? Because if you're going to return from here, you are never going to get to line number 22 and 23, right? So your code will never going to compile. And this will hold true in any language possible. Compile time, there is no issue whether the language is scripting language, compile time language. It will hold true in every single language. All right, understood, right? What's happening over here?
Yeah.
These lines will never get executed because the flow will come over here, m1. Line number 15 will get executed, 16, 17, and then from 19 the value will get returned. So the control flow will never going to reach at line number 22 and 23. If it never going to reach at a certain point, why the compiler will let you write the code? Then there might be a chance you are keep writing the code below here and your code will never going to reach here. You are adding the checks, 1000 lines of checks you have added, but no check has been executed because you are returning below. Earlier, you are returning earlier onwards, before even going to the checks of 1000 lines that you have written. So if some language allows you to write code when it's unreachable and even lets you compile it as well, then the language is not good, right? So all the major languages and that is used by the industry don't allow this thing. Okay, so this was the thing, and now please try to see the code again. Okay, so try compile time exception. Okay, cool. So okay, again, see the code now. Do you find some similarity over here?
Yeah.
So what will happen in here over here?
Line 1, line 2, and then it will throw an exception.
So it will print line 1 and line 2 and then the exception will be thrown, right?
Yeah.
See, the thing is this line reachable?
No.
So why the compiler let you compile it?
Oh, okay.
Same error will come, right?
Yeah,
See,
yeah, compiled.
if I remove this thing and I try to run this, okay. Over here, exception, file not found exception. I need to do this, right? Unreachable statement, right? Again the same error. So I need to remove these lines because this line will never get executed. All right, so now when we know that okay, we need to remove these lines, right? So I have removed these lines. Now what will happen if I try to uncomment the code and try to run it?
Line 1, line 2.
Okay. Line 1 and line 2. All right. Okay, cool. So where is the throws? Okay, throws here. Cool. So throws compile demonstration. Okay. So if I uncomment the code over here, what will be the output? This is the code. File not found exception is here, right? And runner is here. I'm just calling m1 method, right? A_m1 method and a class is this. What will be the output? We have just covered this question a few minutes earlier.
File not found is a compile time exception.
Yes.
Yeah, so it will not execute.
Okay, so it will not execute. That means there will be a compile time exception, right?
Yeah.
Yes, if I execute this, so it was written over here as well, right? Let me add G as well. The same error we have commented over here. So it will not let it compile, right? Why not compile? Let it compile? Because I'm saying that there might be a chance that the file not accept find exception can arise if you use this method, right? Can arise. Not, I'm not saying that it will arise. I'm saying that it can arise, and the caller method should handle the exception, right? It provide alternative exceptions if in case an exception arise of file not found exception, right? This is what's happening, right? Throw keywords delegates the responsibility, and by adding over here file not exception return, we are mentioning that this method can throw file not found exception. We are not guaranteeing that it will throw, but it can throw, and cause it's a checked exception, we need to handle it over here, right, before execution code. Otherwise it will not allow us to compile, right?
Yes.
Okay, now again come here. Now read the code again. Over there was a chance, right? We had written the throws keyword. There was a chance that a compile time exception might get thrown, right? But over here we are writing that it will definitely get thrown, right? We are throwing the error, exception, right?
Yes.
So when there is a chance and we are just saying that okay, there might be an exception, then it is mandatory. And when we are throwing that exception, then it's not mandatory to handle. Does it make sense?
No. So again, we'll have compile time exception.
Yes. So if I try to run this, same exception, right? But we are getting over there. So
Yeah.
either I handle it over here itself in this line, or I delegate the responsibility again to someone else. Okay. Okay, and exception is a parent class, right? So file not found exception will work. File not found will also work. Cool. All right, so over here itself I need to handle. Okay, cool. So now we know that okay, it needs to be thrown or caught, right? It's not like I can throw a compile time exceptions and there will be no I don't need to handle, right? It's not this way. Now come over here, right? Now it will be little easier to answer. What's the issue with this code right now? Hello?
Yeah.
Exactly same thing, right?
No, line 1, line 2 will come.
Line 1 and line 2 will get executed, right?
Yeah.
See, I don't I don't know whether, I mean, I am having a lot of tasks, right? I'm working for 20 hours straight. We have just covered again, right? The issue will be these lines are unreachable. We have just covered this twice. These two lines are unreachable, isn't it?
Okay.
Where are you focused, guys? Everyone had dinner. Unreachable statement, right? We are doing the practical things. It's not like we are doing some theoretical stuff, right? It's the same code we have executed twice. So all right, so let me remove this line because this will be unreachable code, right? So all right, so I have removed this unreachable code now. Now what will happen? This is the original question, right? This is just to make sure that your mind is somewhere else, just to make sure that you are thinking in some other direction, not for the exception handling, just to make sure these two lines are added, because the main question is this one. When you answer that okay, this line is unreachable, then comes the original question. Okay, so what will be the output now?
There'll be no compile time exception because again it's runtime exception. So line 1, line 2, and then my exception will be thrown.
Okay, anyone wants to answer differently? Okay. Okay, E needs to be added. I mean, your answer was correct. Just it's not len, it's line. Cool. See, it's a completely same way, right? If I'm adding throws, then I'm delegating the responsibility, right? If delegating responsibilities to someone and it don't need to handle, right? And that particular caller method don't need to handle it. It's not mandatory. So if I'm throwing it also, then also it's not mandatory, right? For someone to catch it or declare it to be thrown, right? And in the compile time, if I'm delegating the responsibility to some caller method, then if it's mandatory for the caller method to implement the alternative code or to declare it to be thrown, then if I'm throwing it normally, I mean I'm throwing it manually as well, then too it should be caught or thrown, right? There needs to be same logic, right, for the same thing. So that's what's happening over here, right? Now it's clear, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So okay, now it's good. Okay, now back to the basic way what we were intending to do. We wanted to check the chain. Okay, I have added two. Why edit this? Okay, just to make sure that it's not mandatory and this one is mandatory. Okay, cool. Okay, now back to the main delegation item. All right, cool. So what we can do is we can create a B class, and the B class can have a method public void m2. Cool. And m2 method will call a. Okay, yes, m2 method will call. Okay, let me write one more thing. So now if you are doing this, there might be a chance I will forget, so it's better to create a package. Overriding delegated, or simply write throws method. Cool. All right, so main throws and delegation, we are at a delegation right now. Inside this I'm going to use, see whether I use a equals to new a, right? and then use a dot m1, right? Whether I use in this manner or I simply
Abhishek, your voice is breaking.
all right.
Yeah. Voice break.
Okay, let me just change the network. Give me just 2 minutes. Let me know when I'm audible or if I'm audible. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Abhishek.
Is it better now?
Oh, no better. Oh,
All right. Okay, so whether I write the code in this manner or I write new a and dot m1, right? Both will be the same, right? Okay, let's leave
Yeah.
this. Let's leave this. Right, for now we can use this code. Okay, and in the b, now we need to do bb equals to new b and b dot m2, and in m2 method we are creating an object of a and then calling a method of m1, right? Visible? Visible?
Yes.
All right, so there are more things. Okay, just give me. Okay, all right. So now in the a, I'm throwing a runtime exception. All right. So delegation. All right. So let's add c as well. C, and let's have public void m3, and then create an object of b. All right. So in the runner we will call c equals to new c dot m3. All right. So now I'm going to throw file not found exception, and over here I'm going to throw okay, so if I run the code now, what will happen? This is the c m3 method. M3 method is creating an object of b class and calling the m2 method, and m2 method of b class is creating an object of a and calling the m1 method, and this is the m1 method of a.
Compile time exception.
Why?
Because file not found is a compile time exception.
Yes, and it's not handled, right? It's not thrown or caught, right? So I
Yeah.
will delegate the responsibility, right? I have to delegate the responsibility. Throws file not found exception, right? Now if I run, okay, let's see where the exception was, right? The exception was at b, right? b.java line number 9, right? Now I have delegated the responsibility. Now I have said, okay, when I have written throws, that means that I'm saying that, okay, to handle the exception of file not found is the responsibility of someone who's going to call the m1 method, right? And who called the m1 method? B class m2 method, right? B class m2 method. So the responsibility to handle the file not found exception lies to b dot m2 method. And why it was mandatory? Because it's a compile time exception. That's why if I run this code over at line number 11, there is an exception in b.java, right? But if I say I don't want to handle this thing, right? It's too much responsibility for me for now. So I'm saying whoever is going to call me, that will be the responsible person to handle the file not found exception, right? If I run the code again, now it will happen.
Again, compile time exception. from probably M3 method, which is calling M2.
Yes, now it's fine. So you will M3 method calling M2 method, and file not found exception needs to be caught or thrown, right? So now if I write throws over here, I don't want to handle the exception, right? I will write throws file not found exception. Now what will be the output if I try to run this? Just give me 1 minute. Oh shit, the recording was on the whole time. All right, okay. All right, cool. Unpaused, cool. So let's get back to the question. Okay, so the output will be now an error, right? Because now C3 has the responsibility to handle it, but C3 has also written the file not found exception. Now the responsibility lies to the caller method, which is the main method, right? So I need to write the try and catch, right? Whether I can write this or I need to write the try and catch if I want to call it. So this thing, right? Comment out. We understand this thing, right? What happened in all these things over here? The responsibility chain has been created, right? Earlier the responsibility was M1, but M1 was called by M2. So the responsibility was of the M2, right? M2 method to handle the file not exception, but it also throws the exception, right? Delegated the responsibility exception handle to M3, right? But M3 also delegated the responsibility to, my bad, M1, sorry, main method. Okay, now main method is not calling it main method, right? So we have to either write try catch or write the throws, right? So this is the delegation. So this question usually in the MCQ they will be written that in which class there is an error, whether in the B class, C class, A class. All right, now this thing it's the next part of this question only. So it will be throws at main method. So we have the main method, right? We have the main method, and and I want to throw an exception, throw new file not found exception, right? So now this is a checked exception, right? So I have two choice, either to write try and catch block or write throws, right? But if I write throws, then what will happen? And if I write this code now, now what will happen if I run this code? I'm audible? Hello?
Yeah.
All right, what will be the output now?
Line 1.
Okay, why line 1 and why not error?
You are handling that.
Come again.
No, when it executes line 12, that new file not found exception object is created and it will be thrown to J.
Yes. All right, and if I remove this now,
Yeah, now also this.
come again.
And it will be compile time exception, the same exception that is shown below.
Okay, this time there will be compile time exception, right? So
Yeah.
see, the thing is, right now if I try to run this, there will be a compile time exception because I'm throwing an exception and nobody is catching it, right? Or delegating the responsibility. Must be caught or thrown, right? And so if I write throws exception or runtime file not found exception, then the condition that it says either caught, write the try catch, or write throws, now it has been fulfilled, right? So it will allow to execute it. When I write the throws, then it will allow to execute it. Then there will be line 1 and then exception. The difference is, in during the compile time, the compiler just need to know whether you have delegated the responsibility or handled the case by writing the try and catch. So if you have provided any of these things, then it will let you compile. So we have done this over here, right? So if we don't write over here, so we haven't even delegated the responsibility by writing the throws keyword, neither we have written the code inside the try catch block, right? So that's why this code won't compile. But this was not the question. The question was what happens, right? I mean, this was the question, will it compile or not compile? It will compile. Why it will compile? The answer is we are delegating the responsibility to the caller method. So usually in the previous example, when we have delegated the responsibility to A method to B method, then the issue was the A and B method was our method, right? So we had the responsibility to handle it. But right now the main method is called by the main thread, right? And main thread is in the main thread group. So, and who initiated these thread groups? The JVM, right? So we are delegating the responsibility to the JVM. And what happens, again, the first class of the exception handling, what happens when a throwable object reaches the JVM, it printed in the console and the code stops abruptly, right? So that's what it's happening over here. Visible?
Yeah.
All right, so the final question of the throw is overriding. Okay, let's take a class A. Right, now this is very important, right? A lot of people don't know regarding this. So, and this also works with the multi-threading as well. So when we ask the multi-threading question regarding this exception handling with the multi-threading, then because they don't know this thing, so there is an issue with that as also. So we're going to do the same thing, right? Public void m1 sys out, and let's say hello. Okay, simple m1 a method m1, cool. And I'm going to throw exception, cool. And exception is a checked exception or unchecked exception, or compile time exception or runtime exception, which is this thing A. All right, then runner. Am I audible?
Yeah.
All right, so what will, is this runtime exception class is a runtime exception class or a compile time exception class? Okay, we are going to see in the next part of the exception handling, this class as well. Exception is compile time exception. Exception class is the class that we are going to use to create the compile time exception classes, user defined compile time exception classes. So it will be compile time exception. All right, so when I'm throwing an exception, it's a compile time exception, cool. So it needs to be handled, right? We have just learned this thing right now, right? We have spent entire this lecture regarding this only. This is clear, right? We need to handle this. If I want to use the m1 method, I want to make sure that either I delegate the responsibility of exception handling or I write the try catch block, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I run this code now, in which I'm calling the m1 method, what will happen? Okay, let me write the B class, right? B equals new B, right? Okay, so this one needs to be B as well. Cool, go ahead. Now if I run the code, what will happen? The B class, you can see B class just extends A, and A class is this. So if I run the code, what will happen? I'm just calling this M1 method. Okay, please hurry.
It will throw error
Why?
because we're not handling the exception,
Yes,
throws
even you
exception.
can see the screen, right? There is a red line over here. There's a red line over the runner. I'm not even commenting the code right now because I want you to answer fast, quicker, so that we can end the session or end our course earlier. Cool. So there will be an error, right? And it would be compile time error because we have used a compile time exception. We have delegated the responsibility of compile time exceptions to the caller method, and we are calling the M1 method, right? B class is having the M1 method, right? So the thing is, if I override this method, okay, if I override this method, is it visible? I'm overriding the method, right? And let's say that I'm delegating the responsibility of handling the method to the this JVM also. Cool. So okay, let's not provide the to the JVM. Let's keep it here only. So if I run the code now, what will happen? See again, is method is this. A is having M1 method. Now B is also having M1 method. It's overriding the M1 method, right? And calling them. Okay, let's not even call the method, right? Let's call them M1 B M1 B M1. Good. And then there is a runner. What will the output now? See, the thing remains same, right? B class M1 method also has the runtime exception, right? Oh, sorry, compile time exception. So if I even try to run this again, there will be no difference, right? Whether the responsibility comes from the M1 method of B class or it comes from the M1 method of A class, right? We still have the responsibility to handle the exception handling, right? Or exception class, right? But the thing now, what the question now, the main question, right? These are the things that I wanted you already know. Now the main question is, if I remove this, now what will happen? This is a part of meta signature of the parent class, right? I'm trying to, and I have written override method as well over here. So if I remove this thing, now try to execute, now what will happen? What should happen? If I uncomment the code and try to run again, then what will happen? Understand the question, right? Now M2 method don't have the, it's not delegating the responsibility to handle any method, right? So if this thing happens, if this thing allowed in Java, then we don't have to handle anything over here, right? Then this error will not come. Or do Java, while overriding, takes the exception handling things from its parent and then provide again to it. So what will happen if I uncomment the code and then try to run it? Any speculation? I know that you won't be able to answer, but is any speculation?
The BM1.
Come again?
BM1.
You're saying that the code will compile, right? Earlier the code was not compiling.
Yeah.
So you are saying that while overriding the method, I can remove the exception handling.
Yeah.
Parent, okay. Parent method has the exception handling, right? And the child method does not have the. And what is it, pure speculation, or do you have anything to back it? Okay, let me do the reverse thing, right? Let me add, okay, this should be another question, but cool, I can add it over here as well. Okay, let me add public void M2 over, right? And M2 is not throwing any exception, right? A and M2, it's not delegating anything. Cool. And now what I want to do is, again, under the same, okay, Now just copy paste this thing. I'm going to copy paste this thing here and put the override method here. And now I will say, okay, this method in the parent class was not throwing any exception, right? Here I want to throw exception. What will happen in the, if you are saying that this thing is allowed, what will happen in this case? Now the parent method does not have any exception written in the signature, but in child class I have written the signature. Now in this case, what will happen if I try to call b.undo? Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guessing M1 will not inherit the throws, but M2 will throw it because we've explicitly thrown it.
Okay, wait. One by one. First answer for this one, then for this one. What will happen in the case of M1 method?
The exception will be thrown.
Okay, so you are saying,
I mean, it is not dead.
so the code will not compile, right? So you are saying that
Yeah.
if the parent class is throwing an exception, if a parent class method is throwing an exception and child class method wants to override it, then we should not allow it to not override, right? I mean, not remove the exception, right? That the, I mean, at
Yeah.
least handle the exception, or then, okay. You're saying that during the overriding, we should not allow the method signature to get changed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, no worries. Okay, let's have a normal, okay, a temp package. Let me create a temp package for now. Right, okay, test package, cool, not bad. So let's suppose I have a method, right? And in a method there was something, right? There was, okay, instead of a method, create another class, payment, and which payment, credit card payment, right? I have a class credit card payment, right? And I have public void m1, right? And I'm saying that, okay, there might be a chance that there can be an exception while doing the payment, right? My core and do payment. All right, cc payment do payment method. All right, now the thing is, this is a class that I can use in my runner, right? That I, okay, okay, I'm going to delete it eventually, so that's why I'm directly using this. cc payment equals to new cc payment, right? Now cc payment again, and then do payment. Cool. So do payment can provide me some error, right? And let's have some other methods as well. Public void m2 sys out. Let's just write m2 method and then m3 method as well. Cool. Visible? So if I try to run the code, what will happen? Will it run, not run? What will happen? It will not run, right? Exception is a compile time exception. It's shouting. Do payment method is cc payment. I mean, I'm calling the do payment method in the run class, so the responsibility to handle the exception lies in this class, right? So I need to write the try catch, right? Because in the production environment I cannot write the throws to the main method, so I can just catch block runner catch block. Cool. So if I now run this, it will run, right? Okay, I need to comment out this one again. Now run this. So if I run this, now I'm able to call the do payment, right? Because I have
Yeah.
handled the exception, compile time exception. What if this was written by someone else and I recently joined the firm, right? Now I know that if I write new, I know a way so that there will be no issue with the payment, right? I know a way to fix this problem so that we don't have to force people to handle the exception, right? Now there can be two things. One thing can be, I can say do new payment. I can write a method with the do new payment, right? And cause it's a child class, I can, if it's possible, override, right? I want to override, and for override I want to extend the CC payment, right? Why I want to override CC payment? Cause the thing is I'm not changing the method over here because other people are already using it. I cannot change it because there might be a chance we have shared our jars to other people, so other people has already using our code, so we are not going to make any impact on the current file. Current version of the code is already been fixed, so I'm not going to touch this for now. But I don't want to write the code for this one as also, right? So is there a way for me to reuse this code while not using this code? I can use the overriding, right? I can extend the class so that I can use entire code, and I don't want to use this thing. So for this particular scenario I can use the overriding method, right? So this is the thing that I have done. But now I have an implementation which does not throw an exception, so it should be allowed, right? Because when we are overriding the method we are providing different approach, right? We are not providing the same approach. Okay, it's still okay. Let's say and that to do a payment, all right, to do a payment I need to, earlier I need to open a file. I need to open a file, right? Open a payment history file. Payment history file. So to open a payment history file, there might be a chance file not found exception needs to be thrown, right? Because I'm trying to open a file. Yes.
Yes.
But in the new implementation I don't want to read from the file. I will call the database, right? I'll directly call the database instead of using the file. I will just connect with database, right? Connect with database. So the file not found exception, I don't need to handle it here, right? No, because implementation can change and the exception is thrown, especially the compile time exception is thrown based on the implementation only, right? If I'm trying to
Yeah.
open a file, then only file not found exception will be there, right? If I'm not opening a file,
Yeah.
then it makes no sense to handle the file not found exception, right? So it should be allowed,
Yeah.
right? If I run
Yeah.
this and if I remove this, and instead of this if I try to use new CC payment, new CC payment and new CC payment, then if I run this, database hit and this thing, right? Why I have written this code, just to make sure you understand what happens in the industry, right? All right, cool. Let me delete it now. So again, coming back to this thing. So, okay, B, all right. So if the parent class has exception thrown, right, and the child class implementation not throwing an exception, should it be allowed or not allowed?
It should be allowed.
Okay, so if I uncomment the code over here and then uncomment the code this one, and now if I run this code, what will happen? What should be the output? Normal method code is there, right? B.mn.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. B-mn. All right. What will happen if the things are other way around? See, try to use the same logic that we have used, right? Implementations can change, and based on the implementation or based on the business logic, we have to throw exception or not throw exception. So should it be allowed or not allowed? Or if you want to map it with the case, then there might be a chance that earlier we were hitting a database, and but in the latest approach we are trying to open a file. Just reverse the scenario that we have taken. So should it be allowed if the parent class method is throwing an exception while overriding it, or not throwing an exception? And then if I'm overriding the method, should it be allowed to me to throw an exception or not?
It should be allowed because what if
Yes. Implementation can change, and based on the implementation, we throw the exception, right? In the new implementation, we might want to connect with the Redis or the queue services, and they might throw some exception, right? So
Yeah.
correct. It should be allowed, right? See, Vinod, I guess you answered it correctly earlier. Why it should be allowed, right? But why you haven't provided the concrete evidence? Why? If we know why for this, then this is easy to answer, right? So now,
Okay.
if I come here, okay. So okay. Wait. But there is a catch, which we haven't considered. In the case where I am using the parent, in case where I am using my parent class object. Okay. So see now, okay, one more alternative change we need to see. In the runner part, let's see why first one is allowed and another one is not allowed. Let me just show you that thing. Okay, see, if I use, normally if I'm using that, it should work great, but what if I'm using the parent and child class thing? So if I call now a dot m1 method, right? My b dot m1 method now don't allow me to throw the exception, right? I mean, I don't have to throw the exception, right? For m1 method of b class, I don't have to throw the exception, right? I'm audible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I'm using my parent class method, right? So parent class reference method I'm using, right? Now comes an this oops concept. While I am calling a method, it will check method exists in which class. Okay, if there is a m3 method in B, can I call m3 method? Can I call m3 method by using parent class constructor? Can I use a.m3 now over here? A.m3 can I use?
Yeah, we can use.
A.m3. M3 class, M3 method is in B class and not in the A class.
No, you can't use.
No.
See again, the first half of the course, I mean the course that we have done is a basic building block, right? So please go ahead and check this thing, because this concept is most important, right? During the compile time, we check that the method exists in the parent class, right? And during the runtime, we execute the code from the child class. All right, this is the main crux of parent class reference variable can hold a child class object. So if I have 10 more objects also, then also I cannot run those methods, right? So during the runtime, so again coming back to our question, so during the runtime it will going to check the method in, sorry, during the compile time it's going to check the method in which class? Come again. See, a.m3 I cannot call, right? Even if it exists in B. The reason it's not inside the A. So during the compile time, the method should be inside A class, right? So it check whether the method exists inside the parent class or the class which we have the reference of, right?
Okay.
So it will do, okay, please go and check. This is the most important thing, right? If you are not able to answer this, you are not hireable. As simple as this thing. This is the most important thing in the entire oops. Oops is there and Java is so much dominating. The reason is this thing only. Okay, cool. Again, so the thing is, so we already know that when I'm going to use the parent class reference variable toward the child class object, and during the compile time I'm going to check whether the method exists in the parent class, right, or in the reference object. And during the runtime I'm going to use the object child class, right? Okay, overriding exists whichever the closest ancestor has the method, I'm going to call it closest method, I'm going to call it. So if I'm writing m1, right, so it is checking in the reference variable class, right? It's checking the reference variable class, right? We have seen this, right?
Yeah.
And in the reference
Yeah.
variable class they are forcing us to handle the exception, right? In the reference variable class I have written throws exception, right?
Okay.
So I have to provide the implementation because otherwise it will not going to compile, right? So I need to provide the implementation. I'm catching it right now because in production we cannot just throw and give the error to the JVM. Okay, exception cool e and e dot get message. Let's remove here this thing. Now the thing is, if you try to look at this, cause during the compile time we had to in the parent class there was an exception written and there to compile the exception written with the throws keyword, so we had the responsibility to handle that exception, so we have handled it, right? But in the parent implementation, in the child implementation, we don't have to do it, right? So that's why it is allowed, because even though you don't have to, but still you have provided the alternative implementation, right? I'm audible?
Yeah.
So the thing is, even though this is not going to throw any exception and you have provided it, then it's completely fine. There is no issue. I mean, no one is forcing you to handle this, that exception class exception, right? Then two, you have handled it completely fine, great. Your code will not going to break, right? Even though it break during cause of some other reason as well, then also it's handled, right? But if you try to look at the other way around, now the thing is, in the b2 method, in the b class m2 method, and in a class m2 method, if I'm trying to call a class m2 method over here, see now over here, if I try to call a dot m2, okay, my bad, b dot m2, if I try to call b dot m2, right? So the thing is, okay, my bad. Okay, why I'm going at b. Okay, I have committed the code. All right. So see, the thing is, if I'm going to use a dot m2 method, why? Okay, inside the try. Okay, let me just put it out. All right, now it's fine. See, why there was an error? Because of the braces logic, right? I have declared it over here, so its visibility was inside the closest curly braces, and I was trying to access it outside. That side was not accessible to me, so I will put it outside. Cool. Now it's accessible, right? The thing is, I'm using the parent class reference variable having the child class object, right? So what's eventually going to happen during the compile time, if I try to run this code, the code will compile, right? Code will compile because the reason would be because it will check whether the exception is there in the parent class. During the compile time, it checks the reference variable only, right? And reference variable can be only the parent class, not the child class, because child class reference variable can hold the parent class object. Is not allowed in any OOPS language. All right.
Yeah.
Any doubts? So the thing is, even though m2 method is object of b, if this thing is allowed, then what will happen? I'm using the m2 method, and it will get compiled, right? Because in the child class because in the child class I'm throwing the object, I'm throwing the okay sorry, in the child class I'm throwing the exception, but not in the parent class, right? And in the parent class, during the compile time, the parent class method will be checked, right, for the exceptions, and there will be no exception in the parent class. So JVM is not going to force us to provide the alternative implementation in case of some exception arise. Let's say that file not found exception arise, right? So there might be a chance that parent class implementation don't have any exception written, right? So, but the child implementation can change the child can change the implementation and then wants to throw an exception. But the thing is, if someone is using parent class reference variable cannot child class object concept, and in most of the cases, in 99% of the case, we are using this concept. So in those case, we will not have any security for the compile time exceptions, because it will get bypassed, right? Because in this runner method, if this is allowed, if overriding, adding the exception, adding the delegation of exception is allowed in the child classes while overriding, then if this line is written somewhere in the code, then I'm not going to, this line is not be forced to handle it, right, like this one, right? But the implementation is going to be from the B class, right? Because during the runtime, during the runtime, the closest m2 method wherever it exists will be called, right? And the closest m2 method will be in the B class itself, right? Am I audible?
Yeah.
So if you want to remove the signature, then it's completely cool. Because if someone is directly calling the method, then also it's completely fine, right? Because the method is not throwing any exception. But if someone is using the parent class reference variable can hold child class concept, then also it's cool, because you are already handling the exception for no reason. It's completely fine. You're not going to break the code. But the reverse thing is not allowed. The reason is, if we are in for the normal method call is completely fine, right? If I want to use like in this manner, b object m2, then it's forcing me, right? Over here you will see it's forcing me to write this thing, right? But over here it's not forcing me. So if we allow overriding or adding the responsibility of delegation, if I delegate the responsibility of exception handling during the overriding, if I add it, then it should not be allowed, because otherwise it will break this concept, parent class reference variable can child class object, right? Because you can see it over here, right? If this b.m2 is throwing an error, this a.m2 should also throw the error, right? Because eventually they both are going to call the same thing, right? Same line of codes.
Yeah.
That's why you can remove the exception, delegation of exception handling, but you cannot add the delegation of exception handling. Cool. Let me just remove the code just to make sure. And if I run this, okay, wait, b2, let me remove this from here. If I run this from here, yes, see, what's the error? Overridden method does not throw java.file.found exception. So what is saying? Overridden method. Which method is being overridden? The parent class m2 method is the overridden method, and that overridden method is not throwing any file not found exception, so u2 cannot throw it. So it is not allowed. Cool. Understood this thing?
Yeah, Abhishek, yeah.
See, this question is not usually something that usually asks. If I mean, it's not very hard, but it's medium level hard thing, right? We don't expect fresher to know this. But the thing is, but senior people need to know this, right? Because the thing is, you will find the same thing. You will find. See why people think that exception multi-threading is hard. Because let me show you. Runnable. Everyone knows about runnable, right? in runnable you find this method, right? No throws, right? Visible?
Yeah.
But now if I'll, okay, the callable, if someone is not understanding this thing, then it's completely fine. I will let you know in the in the exception handling, oh sorry, in multi-threading, the callable throws exception, right? Now the next thing comes
Yeah.
in the supplier. Now supplier again don't throw an exception, right? Supplier is of 1.8, callable is of 1.5, and runnable is this legacy, right? 1.5. So when someone asks you the difference between callable, runnable, supplier, then the one thing is simply, right? One throws exception, one don't throw exception. So what can be the benefit of throwing an exception at the parent class? What can be the, what can be the drawback of throwing an exception in the parent class? Those things we need to evaluate to provide the answer, right? If you know this thing and you understand, okay, this thing happens, then you can answer. One answer can be this only, right? If you want to answer it, runnable versus callable versus supplier, right? So this question, this thing, because the previous concept is not known, that's why the next concepts becomes hard, right? If you don't know the parent class reference variable can hold child class object concepts, then to understand this thing will become hard, right? And if this thing becomes hard, then in exception handling it will become a little more hard. So that's how the thing goes. So the basic building blocks needs to be perfect. All right, so let's end the session here. It's already been almost 2 hours. Let me stop the